geometry students, in this video today we will be studying two special triangles that are used a lot in geometry and trigonometry. The two special triangles are 45, 45, 90 and 30, 60, 90. Let me start off by saying this video will not be difficult. It'll be pretty easy. It will not be long. However, this is one of the most important videos that we will have this year, especially when it comes to trigonometry. So please take really good notes and make sure you understand this math. Okay, here we go. Your heading today is called Two Special Triangles, Lesson 9.4. Please copy that in your notes and be sure and include today's date so that your notes are organized. Let's continue on. Let me show you first of all what I mean when I say a 45, 45, 90 triangle and a 30, 60, 90 triangle, okay? What I'm talking about is a triangle that has angle measurements of what? 45. You can write this down or just watch. You probably don't need to write this down. It's pretty obvious, but a 45, 45, 90 triangle means a triangle that has 45, 45, and 90 degrees. A 30, 60, 90 triangle is a triangle that has 30, 60, and 90 degrees, okay? So, that's a really bad triangle, isn't it? This would be an example here of a 30, 60, 90 triangle, okay? So understand, before we get started, what we're talking about when I say 30, 60, 90 triangle or 45, 45, 90 triangle. We're talking about triangles that have these angle measurements, okay? Now, let's start our studies off today by looking at the 45, 45, 90 triangle first. Please take some really good notes. Here we go. You ready? Watch carefully what I do, please, students. Here we go. Please take really good notes. In your notes, I want you to write, I want you to draw a 45, 45, 90 triangle, okay? Now, we could call the two legs any length that we want to. I'm using 1 because I want a small, easy number to use. So I want you to draw a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Got it? And then I want you to call the length of this leg here a 1. But remember, are you listening, students? In a triangle, when two angles are congruent, then their opposite sides are congruent. So if you call this leg 1, you have to call the other leg 1 also. Got it? Now off to the side, I want you to find this hypotenuse by using Pythagorean's theorem. So L squared plus L squared equals hypotenuse squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Take the square root of both sides. Now, Mr. Earhart, why did you want us to write all this down? Because, students, in case you ever forget on a test or a quiz, the relationship of the sides of a 45, 45, 90 triangle, you can quickly draw 1, call this side 1, call this side 1, use Pythagorean's theorem, and you have the hypotenuse, okay? Now, look at some things here I want to point out to you. Please look at this. Notice in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the legs are congruent. Do you see that? Number 2, look guys, what is the hypotenuse? Square root of 2. Students, that means there's a relationship here. It's a special relationship. Please don't forget this. In a 45, 45, 90 triangle, if you know the leg of the if you know the length of one of the legs, just take the leg and multiply it by the square root of 2, and you'll always get the hypotenuse. Let that sink in. So if you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and you know the length of one leg, pretend you don't know the other length. Of course, the legs are congruent, but still, just pretend. Take this leg. Don't even worry about using Pythagorean's theorem. Take this leg, multiply it by the square root of 2, and you'll have the hypotenuse. So, Mr. Earhart, that works on any triangle. It's not what I said. It works on a what? A 45, 45, 90 triangle. is also true. Watch this, okay? This is so cool. Watch this. Let's pretend you did not know these two legs, and all that you knew was the hypotenuse. How could you find the leg? Well, go backwards, guys. Just like when you know the leg, you multiplied it by what? Square root of 2. Well, take the hypotenuse, which in this case is square root of 2, and divide it by square root of 2. Square root of 2 divided by square root of 2 would just be 1. Okay? So when you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, if you know the hypotenuse, you can very easily find the leg by dividing the hypotenuse by the square root of 2. And in the same regard, if you know the length of the leg is, if you know the length of one of the legs of a 45, 45, 90 triangle, multiply it by the square root of 2, and you have the hypotenuse. Now remember, guys, that's going to be true for any 45, 45, 90 triangle. Really, Mr. Earhart? Well, yeah. Guys, think about it. Any 45, 45, 90 triangle is going to be similar to another 45, 45, 90 triangle, because we learned that if, look, I'm going to draw a real small one over here. Are these two triangles similar? You bet they are, because we learned a long time ago, if two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in another triangle, then the two triangles are similar. So, yes, we know right away that this works for any 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay? You guys know how I love to sum things up. So some of you have gotten this. Hopefully most of you. Some of you might still be a little sketchy, a little kind of foggy. So if you'll write these things down, this will really help, okay? Let me sum up what I just showed you. You ready? Write this down. Number 1, when dealing with a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the legs will be congruent. So write that down, okay? If you didn't understand what I just said, at least you can memorize what I'm saying now. The legs will be congruent. Next, the hypotenuse will be square root of 2 times the leg. I just showed that to you. So if you want to know what the hypotenuse is, you multiply the leg times square root of 2. Copy that down. Number 3, the leg will be what? The leg will, I'm going to put equal. The leg will equal. I like the word equal here a lot better. The leg will equal what? The hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to get a drink here. Copy that down, guys. Finish copying that down, okay? These are really important to know. The legs will be congruent in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. The hypotenuse will be square root of 2 times the leg in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And the leg will be equal to the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2 in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So let's apply this over and over and over, okay? Alright, here we go. You ready? If I'm going too fast, just have the supervising teacher pause the video. Let's go ahead and look at some problems. 2, to be exact, dealing with 45, 45, 90 triangles. There, I'm giving you this problem. Would you please copy that in your notes? I want you to find the length of the hypotenuse without using Pythagorean's theorem, okay? Without using Pythagorean's theorem. So notice I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Please copy this in your notes. I wish I had not given you that number. Pretend it's not there. And let's call that y, okay? Alright, now, anytime you're given a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and you know the leg, you know the other leg has to be the same. So y equals 3. That was really tricky, wasn't it? Alright, now, anytime you're looking for the hypotenuse in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, take the leg and multiply it by what? Square root of 2. So 3 times the square root of 2 is just what? 3 square root of 2. So there we go. It's that easy, guys. I'm telling you, today's lesson is not difficult, but it's so important for trigonometry later, okay? Alright, so, if you know one leg in a 45, 45 90 triangle, the other leg's congruent, and the hypotenuse is the leg times the square root of 2. Now, what if I give you, copy this in your notes please, what if I give you a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and I forgot to put this in here, so make sure you put that in there. What if I give you a 45, 45, 90 triangle, I only give you the hypotenuse like I did here. And I want you to find the other two sides. Can you do that? Well, sure you can. Here's what I've taught you. Go back 2 pages. The leg will be or equal to what? Hypotenuse divided by what? Square root of 2. So here we go. I know what the hypotenuse is, so I take the hypotenuse and I divide it by what? The square root of 2. These will cancel, leave me with 2 over 1, or just 2. So there's that easy. So one leg is 2. Now in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the legs are congruent, so this leg over here will also be 2. And there we go. Guys, I hope you're getting this, okay? These are special, special triangles, okay? And they're really useful and helpful, alright? Okay, moving on. Now, I'm going to go back one more time. Make sure you've got these, guys. The legs are congruent. The hypotenuse will be a leg times the square root of 2, and the leg will be the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2. Make sure you memorize that, know that. Alright, let's move on now and take a look at 30, 60, 90 triangles. I'm going to give you some information. Please take really good notes. Are you ready? Here we go. I want you to draw a 60, 60, 60, or an equilateral triangle, whatever you want to call it. Can you do that, please? Okay. Now, I want you to drop down in altitude. Straight down, drop down in altitude, and call that 90 degrees. Now, if you did that correctly, here's what you're going to have. You're going to have 90 degrees here. Go ahead and draw another triangle here, students, okay? You're going to have 90 degrees here. You're going to have 60 degrees here. And when you drew the altitude cut the 60 in half and made it 30. Now I want to pause and talk about that. And I hope you guys will give me really big ears right now and listen. I'm almost done. Probably 5 to 7, 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm done. But listen, when you draw an altitude, does it always cut the angle in half? No. No, no. Well, how do I know it did here then? Well, I'm glad you asked. Thanks for asking. Because when I drop this altitude down, because it's a 60, 60, 60 triangle, that means this angle here is what? 90. And look what I have. I have angle, angle, side, congruent to angle, angle, side. So I know because of angle, angle, side, this triangle here, we'll call it triangle number 1, is congruent to this triangle over here, we'll call it triangle 2. So because those two triangles are congruent, that means this angle up here has to be congruent to this angle here. So it has to be 30 and 30, okay? Don't forget what we've learned in the past, like angle, angle, side. Alright, now, I started off by drawing a 60, 60, 60 triangle, and I dropped an altitude down. By doing that, I came up with this triangle over here. Now, you can call this equilateral triangle. You can say that it has, now watch this, go back over here to your triangle to the left. You can say all of the sides were 4, or 40, or 4,000. It doesn't matter what you call each side, as long as you call all the sides the same. Well, I'm going to call, you can pick any number you want, and you'll end up with the same answer, okay? But I'm going to say that my equilateral triangle had lengths of 2. Can you write that down, please? So the equilateral triangle that I drew had 3 sides of 2. Now, that means if this side here is 2, what is this side right here? 2. And if this whole side here was 2, and I drop down this altitude, and triangle number 1 is congruent to triangle number 2, that means this side here is congruent to this side here, and if the whole thing's 2, that makes this length here 1, and this length here 1, to give you a 2. So what is this length right here going to be? A 1. Got it? Now how can I find this last leg? Well, please trust me. We're going to use Pythagorean's theorem. Let's go ahead and solve for this last leg, okay? Take some notes on this. Leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. bring the 1 over and make it negative. L squared equals 3. Now take the square root of both sides, and L equals the square root of 3. So my missing leg here is square root of 3. Got it? I'm going to wait a second while you get caught up, then we're going to go on. Okay, so real quick, please do not take notes on what I'm about ready to do. Do not take notes on this, just watch. Why did I show you all of this mess here, this rigmarole? Why? Well, because on a test or a quiz, if you forget this, watch what you can do. You can very quickly draw a 60, 60, 60 triangle, call it 2, 2, 2, drop an altitude, and say to yourself, okay, self, this angle is 60, so this is 60, this side is 2, so that stayed 2, this cut it in half, so that's a 1, that's 90, that's 30, and then using Pythagorean's theorem, you can find that missing side, and just like that, you have a model to use, okay? A model triangle, a model 30, 60, 90 triangle. That's why I taught you all of that, okay? So, notice how this side right here is the square root of 3. Now, look what you have, students. Look. Notice, look, okay, now this is very important you get this. See this 30 degrees? When the side across from the 30 degrees, make note of this, please write this down, is the shorter leg. Don't ever forget that, please, okay? In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the side across from 30 degrees is the shorter leg. The leg across from the 60 is going to be your longer leg, okay? L-O-N-G-E-R. And of course, this is your hypotenuse, okay? So look at the relationships. We have all kinds of relationships here going on, okay? Look. If you take the shorter leg and multiply it by what? 2. You get the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always twice as big as the shorter leg. Always. Yes, in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse will always be twice as big as the shorter leg. Or you could say the shorter leg is half as big as the hypotenuse. And students, dudes, look at this. Boom, blew my brain, look. Shorter leg. If you take the shorter leg times what? The square root of 3. You get the longer leg. 1 times square root of 3 is square root of 3. Now don't worry, I'm going to write all of this down for you over here in a second, okay? But just watch right now and look. So if I take the shorter leg and multiply by the square root of 3, I get the longer leg. Or if I take the longer leg, which is what? Square root of 3, and divide it by what? Square root of 3, I get 1, which is the shorter leg. So let's go over this again. If I take the shorter leg and multiply it by 2, I'll get the hypotenuse. If I get the hypotenuse and divide it by 2, I'll get the shorter leg. If I take the shorter leg and multiply it by the square root of 3, I'll get the longer leg. If I take the longer leg and divide it by the square root of 3, I get the shorter leg. Okay? Now, I think a lot of this has made sense, but just in case you're a little confused, I've written everything down for you. Some of you understand this and some of you don't, but everybody can use this and memorize this. Here it is. Let me sum up what I just showed you, okay? Number 1, for 30, 60, 90 triangles, the shorter leg is what? Half as big as the hypotenuse, or you could say the hypotenuse is twice as big as the shorter side. I'm going to be quiet and let you copy that down. The shorter leg is half as big as the hypotenuse. It's half. And the hypotenuse is twice as big as the shorter side. Moving on. The longer leg is square root of 3 times as big as the shorter leg. Okay? The longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. I'm just going to get rid of this. That's easier. There we go. The longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. The longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. The shorter leg equals the longer leg divided by square root of 3. So these two here are just kind of opposites of each other, okay? If you take the longer leg, if you take the shorter leg and multiply it by the square root of 3, you'll get the longer leg. And if you take the longer leg and divide it by square root of 3, you'll get the shorter leg. So they're kind of going back and forth, okay? Let me pause a second and let you guys get caught up. Now, as you look at all of this, here's my main thought. It sounds like to me, when it comes to a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the key side is the shorter leg. If you know the shorter leg, the other sides fall right into place. I mean, think about it. If you know the shorter leg, multiply it by 2, and you've got the hypotenuse. Multiply it by square root of 3, and you've got the longer leg. So the key to a 30, 60, 90 triangle is finding the shorter leg. Okay? Find the shorter leg. Now, what is the shorter leg? It's the side across from 30 degrees. What is the longer leg? The longer leg is the side across from the 60 degrees. Okay? Alright. Copy this down, please. I'm going to move on in just a minute. So if you're not done, have the supervising teacher pause it. We're going to move on in just a minute. The key side in a 30, 60, 90 triangle is the shorter leg. Okay, I'm moving on. If you need to pause the video, please do so. Alright, let's look at 3 problems and we're done. Here we go. Copy this problem in your notes, please. This is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay? Now, notice I've given you the hypotenuse. Got it? I've given you the hypotenuse. Now, remember, well, let me pause. Some of you are still copying this down. Copy this down, please. Now remember, students, the hypotenuse is always twice as big as the shorter leg. Now here's 30, so y is my shorter leg. So if the hypotenuse is 8, then y is 4. The shorter leg is always half the hypotenuse. Okay? Now, once you know the shorter leg, you know what to do. The longer leg is square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So, we're going to take the shorter leg, 4, and multiply it by the square root of 3, and we'll have the longer leg. So there it is, 4 square root of 3. So I only knew one side in my 30, 60, 90 triangle, yet I could find the other 2 sides because of all the things that we learned. Okay? Alright, let's continue on. 2 more problems. Copy this in your notes, please. 30, 60, 90 triangle. A side of S, a side of T, and a side with a length of 5. Now remember, one of the easiest things to do is when you have the shorter side, the shorter leg, that's the key. Well, look, in this problem here, here's 30, go straight across. I've given you the shorter leg. Man, when you know the shorter leg, it's easy. If the shorter leg is 5, then the hypotenuse would have to be what? 10. Remember, the hypotenuse is always twice as big as the shorter leg, or you can say the shorter leg is half the length of the hypotenuse. Also, when you know the shorter leg, how do you find the longer leg? You always multiply the shorter leg by what? That's right, square root of 3. So T equals 5 square root of 3, and we're done. That easy, guys. When you know the shorter leg, it's so easy to find the other 2 sides. Alright, last but not least, this problem here. Go ahead and copy this down, please, and then we're going to be finished. Go ahead and copy this down, please, then we'll be finished. We'll work this out and we'll be done. Alright, here we go. Now, notice what side you do know is the longer leg, okay? Let's go back here and look. You ready? The shorter leg equals the what? Longer leg divided by what? Square root of 3. So we're going to take this longer leg right here, 10, and we're going to divide it by the square root of 3. So F equals 10 divided by the square root of 3. That's so simple, students. It really is. So take your longer leg, divide it by the square root of 3, and that's your shorter leg. Now once you know the shorter leg, you know how to find the hypotenuse. You multiply this by 2. So 10, don't panic over this, guys, it's pretty easy. 10 over the square root of 3 times what? 2 over 1. And so G would equal 10 times 2 is 20. Square root of 3 times 1 is square root of 3. And that's it. Guys, I hope this has made sense. It's not that difficult if you'll learn the things, the list that I've taught you. This list here for 30, 60, 90 triangles, and this list here for, if I can find it, for 45, 90 triangles. It'll really help you if you know those two lists, okay? Alright, that's it, guys. I hope this video has been a help to you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call or email.